Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2020. Today we're going to talk about the latest with the coronavirus and some pop culture notes that I want to talk about involving it. Big name baseball pitcher getting Tommy John surgery. A couple of college basketball freshmen making announcements for declaring for the draft. A lot of NFL news I want to get to. Masked Singer and Lego Masters tonight, new episodes. I'm going to preview them and my top 10 albums of 2019. All right, we'll start with the coronavirus. Big news came out yesterday. Lady Gaga shared in an Instagram post about how she has to postpone her album release date, which was supposed to be April 10th, but she's moving it to some point in the summer, I believe. And she made a huge statement saying that she wants everything to be back to normal before she releases her album. So I think it's the right decision by Gaga. She had to postpone a lot of her shows as well that she was supposed to have this spring in Vegas. As for right now, her new tour, the Chromaticas tour, is still supposed to go on as scheduled. So that hasn't been affected by it yet. But yeah, Lady Gaga had to postpone her release date of her new album. So this would be, her fifth album? Yeah, her fifth album. She had The Fame Monster. Then she had the Born This Way album. I can't think of the name of it right now. And then she had the album that Applause was on, that's 4. And then she had Joanne, which was her 5th album. And so this would be her 6th album, the new Chromatica. So, and then you had the A Star Is Born soundtrack. So this is technically her 7th album. I didn't even think about that. So, yeah, it was The Fame was her first album. Then it was The Fame Monster. Born This Way, Art Pop, that's the one with Applause on it, and then Joanne, and then the Star Is Born soundtrack with Bradley Cooper, and then her 7th album technically would be Chromatica. So she's postponing the Chromatica date till at least the summer. So that's big news in the pop culture coronavirus part of the factor. Jimmy Kimmel is hosting a new rendition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and it's going to be the first time it's in primetime in 20 years. Obviously, Regis Philbin did it for a long time. Then Meredith Vieira did it for a while, and now Kimmel's going to do it. And it's supposed to come on air April 8th on ABC. So that's going to be up against The Masked Singer. So that's not good news for The Masked Singer from a rating standpoint. Although The Masked Singer's done very well in ratings. It beat Survivor a lot in the fall. So I think Masked Singer will be fine. So Jimmy Kimmel's hosting Millionaire, and I was listening to him on a podcast with Bill Simmons of The Ringer, who are obviously former colleagues and are good friends to this day. He was talking about the Millionaire Show on the podcast. He mentioned that Andy Cohen was a contestant on the show, and it was revealed that Cohen was tested positive for COVID-19. So, and Kimmel had said that that the contestants didn't sit all that close to the host. So that's good. And he said that he did shows without the audience, which he said that it turned out actually pretty good without the audience, but obviously that show, in my opinion, is better with an audience because the audience can technically play along in the game because it's a part of the clue package where you could do like an audience vote on what they think the right answer to the question is. So like that would be weird to see if they replace that clue with anything else once the show comes on, but I want to address that really quick because that's obviously going to be a new show in primetime or new game show that everybody loves, and everybody loves Jimmy Kimmel too. So I wanted to talk about that and him discussing the fact that Andy Cohen, who tested positive for COVID-19, was on that show, and luckily Kimmel's okay, and apparently Cohen's doing well as well. Prince Charles also tested positive for COVID-19. That was on the news before. Hopefully he gets well soon. And he's getting up there in age too, so we're praying for him, and hopefully he'll be okay eventually. All right, next I want to talk about Noah Syndergaard, who has been diagnosed with a torn ligament and is getting Tommy John surgery tomorrow. That is a gigantic blow for the New York Mets, assuming that we'll still have a season. But I do have a little conspiracy theory with Chris Sale getting Tommy John recently and now Syndergaard getting it. I wonder if they think that we're not going to have a season, so they might think it's worth getting the surgery. So I don't know what the players are thinking, but meaning in terms of whether that they think that they're going to have a season or not. So this is two big-name pitchers on big-market teams getting Tommy John surgery and are very important to their team's success, especially Sale, because he's literally the only good pitcher they have. The Mets, I think this is a huge blow for them, but they still have Jacob deGrom, who's the best pitcher on their staff. They traded for Marcus Stroman. Now they must be happy that they traded for him, because with this injury, now you have Stroman, who comes in as your number 2, and then you put Steven Matz back in the rotation. He's okay. Very erratic in my mind. Had showed flashes of potential, and then he had some injuries along throughout his career. And then in the offseason, they signed Michael Wacha and Rick Porcello to be their 4th and 5th starters, who aren't bad as number 4 and number 5 starters at this stage of their careers. So I think the Mets will be okay in their rotation, although I think Noah Syndergaard gives them a better chance to win when he's healthy and pitching rather than spending the year on the injured list. And in terms of my season predictions, does this change it? Maybe. I'm considering, because I thought that the Mets had some potential this year to do big things. And there is this thing called the trade deadline where you can go out and trade for a pitcher. Maybe a pitcher that's a rental. Normally that's what teams do when they're supposed to be good and they lose a big part of their team, go out and trade for a rental. The Yankees are in a similar situation because they lost Luis Severino for the year due to Tommy John surgery, and you know they're going to be in contention with or without him. So you know the Yankees are going to go out and make a trade for somebody to fill in that spot for a year or maybe 2 years, maybe a 2-year, a year and a half guy. And maybe the Mets will do the same because Tommy John surgery normally takes a year to recover from. The Mets are more likely, in my mind, to get the year and a half guy rather than the rental guy. So the 1 year or half year rental. So so now both New York baseball teams are under pressure to make moves for starting pitchers at the deadline, assuming we have a baseball season this year. Alrighty. Next up, college basketball. A lot of big-name freshmen making decisions. Obi Toppin declared for the draft. I talked about Toppin yesterday on the show. He won the AP Men's Player of the Year award, and now he's declaring for the draft. He's going to be a lottery pick. I said yesterday that I thought if they had a tournament and Dayton made a run led by Toppin, then his stock would have went up and could have potentially been a top 5 pick. I love Obi Toppin. I think he's going to be a really good player in the NBA. And Onyeka Okongwu declared for the draft. He was a freshman at USC. He might be a lottery pick too. He had a nice freshman year, had some moments, and helped lead USC to a pretty good season. I think they would have been in the tournament if we had one. So, that's interesting that, whether, how far USC would have gone, because if they made the tournament and went on a nice run, then Okongwu's stock would have went up if he played well in the tournament. And the tournament is always where players' stock rises. Like Stephen Curry, when he was at Davidson, his stock went up because they made the tournament. He led them to some tournament wins. So, you see it all the time in college basketball or in college football in some cases with bowl games, but lately, players that have planned on declaring for the draft in the NFL have been sitting out of bowl games unless if their team was in the college football playoffs. So, yeah, this is what stinks about not having the tournament. So, fans and media don't get to see who's making a late stock push or a drop in their stock. And North Carolina freshman Cole Anthony is waiting on making his announcement due to everything that's going on in our country right now. So he's going to give it time. There's a lot of people like my friend Derek that suggests that he should go back to school. I think Cole Anthony is going to be a good basketball player. If he didn't get injured, he would have been a top 3 pick in the draft in my mind. Like, he's very good. I think that whomever drafts him will be getting a steal of a player. If he goes back to college, that won't be the worst thing for him. I think that if he does go back to school, then he'll probably be projected to go higher in the draft in 2021 than he would in 2020. But I feel that he should go higher in the 2020 draft than people are projecting, because people are downplaying him because he was injured, and he played poorly, in my opinion, because he was recovering from his injury. So I think if he gets drafted this year, somebody's going to get a steal, and if he waits another year, then that won't be a bad decision as well. So either way, I think that Cole Anthony, I think, is in a good spot. So I don't blame him for waiting on his decision whether to go back to North Carolina for a sophomore season, which would be huge for the Tar Heels. And with or without Cole Anthony, the North Carolina Tar Heels will have a bounce-back season in 2020, 2021. So if they were to, then you would want Cole Anthony to come back. But I think they are going to have a bounce-back year regardless of what Cole Anthony does. Now I'm going to talk some NFL. Discussed this a little bit yesterday on the show, and now it's official. Cam Newton officially released from the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the 2015 MVP winner led the Panthers to a 15-1 record and to the Super Bowl. And then Von Miller and company stopped that Panthers offense, and the Broncos ended up winning the Super Bowl that year in what was Peyton Manning's swan song year. But yeah, if Cam Newton's healthy and shows that he can produce at a high level, I think it's worth it for a team like the Chargers to go out and sign him. I think the Bears are probably regretting the Nick Foles thing right now. I would if I'm them. Because if Cam Newton was released first, then they'd be all over Cam Newton. I'd rather have Cam Newton healthy than Nick Foles. And Nick Foles has shown zero success outside of Philadelphia. So I don't like the Nick Foles move for the Bears at all, especially now that Cam Newton is free. And put Cam Newton on the Bears, and if Cam Newton's healthy, then that is a playoff caliber team in the NFC. So I think the Bears should be regretting that Foles trade a little bit, unless if Cam is not healthy. So I'm the Chargers. I go out and sign him. I think he gives them a chance to contend in the AFC, but I wouldn't put them on the level of the Ravens. Actually, I'm sorry. I wouldn't put them on the level of the Chiefs. I would put them on the level with the Ravens. I think that the Ravens are going to take a bit of a step back from a win-loss total standpoint, but they'll still be a contender in the AFC. I'd put them on that level. I think they have really good talent. on their roster on both sides of the ball. And that's why I feel like if Cam Newton goes there and he's healthy, then that is a contender in the AFC. So if I'm Cam Newton, I'd go to the Chargers. Especially now that they really don't have a long-term-ish solution at quarterback. And maybe they can sign Cam to a one-year deal. And if that works out, then you either extend them or maybe he gets more money elsewhere. So, yeah, a lot of Pandora's box with Cam Newton and the possibilities. I don't think he's going to go to a rebuilding team like the Jaguars or the Dolphins, because I think that the Dolphins are targeting Tua in this draft, and I think that the Jaguars are clearly, and they won't openly admit this, but I think that they're looking at Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields 2021. So, that is certainly in the realm of possibility for the Jaguars. All right, breaking news, NFL. Ndamukong Suh expected to return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 1 year, $8 million. Suh is somebody that is not the player he once was when he was on the Detroit Lions, but he's still a solid player, a good veteran. I think the fact that they landed Tom Brady is what made him go back there. And there was reporting that a lot of players want to go to the Bucs now because of the presence of Tom Brady. So, it's a good signing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's certainly a veteran that would help them on the defensive line. So they brought back him and Jason Pierre-Paul on that D-line. So, the Bucs are pretty loading up here to be a contender in the NFC. And Robbie Anderson signed with the Carolina Panthers yesterday on a 2-year, I think it was a $20 million deal. So Teddy Bridgewater has a nice target. He's not a number one receiver as we saw with the Jets, but he's somebody that can make the occasional big play. So I think that he would be a nice little fantasy sleeper, if anything, going into the 2020 season with Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers. And replacing Anderson in New York, Brashad Perryman going to the Jets on a 1 year, I believe it's $8 million deal. Perryman was the number 3 receiver on Tampa last year with Jameis Winston, and there was a point where both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were injured, and Perryman stepped up for the Bucs and really put up good fantasy numbers for fantasy owners and helped the Bucs offense. So I don't think Perryman is going to be the number 1 guy on the Jets. I think the Jets are clearly targeting a wide receiver in the draft. If I'm them, I draft Jerry Jeudy if he's there at 11 when they pick. And if he's not there, then go with CeeDee Lamb. And tomorrow I'm actually going to do an NFL mock draft on the show because I haven't done one in a while. So just to get everybody excited a little bit for the draft. And the draft would normally fall on a Thursday, and tomorrow State is the 26th, in what was supposed to be opening day of Major League Baseball, which is crazy. If baseball is going on right now, I'd be doing preview and predictions podcasts with Jeff Maglicetti, Derek Felix, and Terry Cushman. Maybe we'd have Nick Costos on to do gambling for baseball. And I'd have all these people on the show previewing the season. But now we are just trying to recoup from coronavirus and talk about other things that are going on in the world. But I'm talking NFL on my show right now, so I think that would get my listeners excited a little bit. So doing a mock draft tomorrow, and I'm interested to see how that would play out. Emmanuel Sanders signs with the Saints on a 2-year, I believe that was a $20 million deal. That's a great signing for the Saints. They finally have that number 2 guy to go along with Michael Thomas. Sanders was somebody that had a big impact on the 49ers offense as they went to the Super Bowl. They made the trade for him, didn't give up a lot of draft capital, and he was a rental for them, did a nice job. He was a good 49er, and now he goes to the New Orleans Saints to help out Drew Brees and that offense. That was a nice response there by the Saints after the Bucs made their sexy signing of Tom Brady So that's going to be a really good rivalry in the NFC South next year between New Orleans and Tampa Bay. And that was, I think, one of the best signings of the offseason, Emmanuel Sanders going to the Saints. Another signing I liked was Dontari Poe to the Dallas Cowboys. I believe that was on a 1-year deal. He provides good depth for them on their defensive line. They need that pass rush help along the side with DeMarcus Lawrence on that D-line. So he'd be a good run stopper in the middle. Poe is somebody that's bounced around over the last few years. He was on the Chiefs. He was on the Falcons, I believe, and he was on the Panthers last year. Now he's in Dallas. He'll certainly help them. I like that signing a lot. And I believe Dallas picked up Gerald McCoy, too, to help their defensive line. So the Cowboys are making some nice moves on the defensive side of the ball this offseason. They brought back Amari Cooper. They've had a really good offseason despite losing Byron Jones. Ken Rosenthal broke the story on Twitter and on social media that the Major League Baseball opening day for home will be aired tomorrow. They're calling it MLB's opening day at home. And tomorrow, MLB will broadcast a classic game from each of the 30 teams nationally across various platforms. It's going to be fun to see which games they show. They can be from all different years. I want to predict which ones they'd air from each team. That'd be really tough because there's a lot of Yankee classics. There's a lot of Dodger classics, a lot of Red Sox classics. You would think the 2004 Game 4 between the Yankees-Red Sox would be the Red Sox game. Cubs-Indians Game 7 for the Cubs would be great, with the Indians coming back to tie it off over Aroldis Chapman back in 2016. I think that was the best and most important game in baseball history, the Cubs-Indians Game 7, because that really ended the Cubs' drought, and that was the most important championship won in sports over the past decade. I think the next big important one for sports in terms of long droughts would probably be the New York Knicks. If I had to pick a franchise that was perceived as a laughingstock like the Cubs were, like the Red Sox were before they ended their drought, right now it's the New York Knicks. It has to be a big market team that has a lot of fans and have been known more for failure than success. That was the Cubs. That was the Red Sox. That's the Knicks now. So you know that the pick for the Cubs will be the 2016 World Series. 2011 World Series Cardinals-Rangers would be fun. One to air for the Cardinals, or the 2006 NLCS Game 7 where Carlos Beltran struck out on the final pitch of the game that sent the Cardinals to the World Series. That was not a good Cardinals team that made the World Series, by the way. The 2011 Cardinals team was better than the 2006 Cardinals team. And I believe that 2006 Cardinals team won like 83 games. And that division was just really bad, and then they got hot at the right time and won. Plus, they had one of the best players in baseball, and Albert Pujols, on their team. So, that's going to be a fun watch. I'm trying to think of other good games. Astros-Dodgers 2017 Game 7 for Houston, maybe. Or the 2017 Game 5. That was like the 13-12 game. But that's a really fascinating game now looking back, because if the Astros weren't cheaters, then Clayton Kershaw's playoff reputation would be a lot different. Because let's face it, the Dodgers would have won that World Series had the Astros not cheated. And you know what? You could argue the New York Yankees probably would have won that World Series had the Astros not cheated as well, because they took the Astros to 7 games, and the Astros offense got some big hits in that Game 7. Now's the year they cheated, and they got a lot of big hits in Game 5 against the Dodgers. So you could argue that 2017 World Series should have went to the Yankees or the Dodgers and not the Astros. But that Game 5 of 2017 will probably be rare for Houston. Like I said, the Yankees have a lot of good ones. 2001 against the Diamondbacks, Game 5, the Derek Jeter home run, Mr. November, would be one of my picks for the Yankees. The Tampa Bay Rays, I know which one they're going to pick for them. They're going to pick the game against the Yankees, game 162, where Evan Longoria hit a walk-off home run off of Dellin Betances, and I believe it was Dellin Betances, and sent the Rays into the playoffs and sent the Red Sox out of the playoffs. So that would be my choice for the Tampa Bay Rays in terms of games that they're going to. So they're going to get a regular season game potentially for their game, or in their 2008 World Series run where they beat the Red Sox and David Price come out of the bullpen. They might air that as well. Orioles, that's a tough one. There's not really any memorable Oriole games that I could really come up with. It has to involve Cal Ripken, I would say, in one of those, in that era. Talked about the Yankees, Rays. The Toronto Blue Jays, I wonder if they'll re-air the Jose Bautista home run where it was against the Rangers. They came back from 2-0 down in the ALDS, and that was where all the debris was flying. I don't know if they'll re-air that one. They'll probably re-air a couple of games from their World Series runs in the early 90s. That would be my guess for the Blue Jays. The White Sox, definitely their 0-5 run. Indians, that's a tough one. Maybe their 2016 run, maybe 2007 with CC. And you know they're going to re-air for the Brewers 2008 with CC Sabathia. That's pretty memorable for them. The Detroit Tigers, maybe their 2006 World Series run where they upset the Yankees when Justin Verlander was a rookie. The Kansas City Royals, you know it's going to be 2015 against the Mets, Game 5 or Game 1. There's a lot of good games for the Royals in that World Series. The Minnesota Twins, they'll probably re-air early 90s when they won. AL West, the Angels, 2002 they won, so you'll probably be seeing 2002 Angels-Giants for them. Talked about the Astros already. The Rangers, I think you'll see a lot of 2010 and 2011 World Series run games. They beat the Yankees in 2010, and then they beat the Tigers in 2011. Nelson Cruz had a walk-off grand slam against the Tigers, so I wonder if that will be the game that they re-air for them. The Mariners, you'll probably see mid-90s when they beat the Yankees, when A-Rod was a young kid in that series, when Lou Piniella was managing them. And then the Athletics, you'll probably see a lot of early 2000s with them. Maybe back when Jason Giambi was on their team. And then the National League, the Mets, you'll probably see a lot of their games in the late 80s. Definitely that game 6 where in 1986, I believe it was, when the ball went under the glove of the Red Sox player and they ended up winning that World Series in 1986 for the Mets. They'll probably show some 2015, but when they're the losing team, obviously, against the Royals. The Nationals, they'll probably re-air last year's World Series, a couple of those games in that run. Maybe Game 7. Maybe Game 6. I would re-air Game 7 if I were the people. The Atlanta Braves, definitely 95 when they won. The Marlins, 2003 when they beat the Yankees, when they had Josh Beckett on their team. And the Phillies, they'll re-air 2008, I'd say, when they beat the Rays, when they had that good team with Ryan Howard and Chase Utley and that really good rotation. Jimmy Rollins was on that team as well. They were managed by Charlie Manuel. Talked about the Cubs already. I think it's going to be the 2016 World Series. Cardinals, I think, will be 2011 Game 6. Brewers, I mentioned 2008 with CC Sabathia. The Reds, they'll probably re-air early 90s for them. Back when, like, Paul O'Neill was on that team and Barry Larkin and Pete Rose was still around. And then the Pirates, that's a tough one. They really haven't had all that much success. I know in the middle of this past decade, they were solid, made the playoffs a couple times with Andrew McCutchen. But that's a good call, the Pirates. I don't know what they were there. Probably back in the Clemente days. So that's probably the toughest one that I could predict. It'll probably be like the Roberto Clemente years if I had to make a random guess. Dodgers, definitely 1988, and the shot heard around the world. That's a lock in my mind. Padres, they really haven't had much success. If I had to guess for them, I'd say the 98 World Series run when they played the Yankees. The San Francisco Giants, definitely the Madison Bumgarner out of the bullpen in Game 7 against the Royals is a game that comes to mind for them. And they had the run in 2012 and in 2010 as well, so they have a couple of games to choose for San Francisco. The Diamondbacks, it's a no-brainer lock. 2001 World Series Game 7 against the Yankees, where they came back against Mariano Rivera, a.k.a. the GOAT of closers in baseball history. So that's a lock in my mind, what they're going to show with the Diamondbacks. And last but not least, the Rockies. That's a tough one, too. They really haven't had much success either. If I had to guess for them, I'd say the 2007 World Series run when they lost to the Red Sox, when Tulowitzki was just like an up-and-coming player. Todd Helton was in his prime back then. Their pitching wasn't all that great. That's probably why they didn't win that World Series. But they'll probably re-air some games from that run to the World Series. Even though they were swept in the World Series, they'll probably re-air some of the NLCS games against the Diamondbacks back from 2007. So there you have it. My guesses for what each team they're going to re-air for each team on the national networks tomorrow. Let's see if I'm right. And we'll do on Friday, compare my predictions to what they actually aired for each team. So the goal's 30 for 30, obviously, but realistic goal. Let's go with half, 15 of 30. If I get more than half right, then I'll be happy with that. All right, Masked Singer tonight, 8 o'clock on Fox. Group C championship. The loser obviously gets unmasked, and then the other three go to the Super 9. I'm interested to see if they pause it due to COVID-19, but we'll find out maybe tonight or later in the week. Obviously, the contestant that went home last week was the Swan, who wound up being Bella Thorne, who co-starred with Ken Jeong in a movie. She was in that movie You Get Me on Netflix. That was a hit on that network. And still left, The Astronaut, talked about last week, a whole new mission, talking about a fresh start, a circle of life, a new world. There was a lot of balloons. There was sign language in the clue. From a vocal standpoint, I think it's Jesse McCartney. But from a clue standpoint, I think it could be Donald Glover, who was Ken Jeong's guest last week, which was a really solid guess. Obviously, Circle of Life, Donald Glover played Simba in The Lion King. So that tie obviously makes sense. But from a vocal standpoint, it sounds like Jesse McCartney. And the other guesses by the judges were Joseph Gordon-Levitt from Robin and Corey Feldman by Joel McHale, who was the guest judge last week. I don't think there's a guest judge this week. I think it's just the four of them this week. The Night Angel, I think, is going to win the competition, to win the whole thing for Season 3. I think she's really talented. And right now, I'd pick her as the front runner. Last week, I thought it could have been Christina Aguilera. But I rewatched and noticed that I didn't really think that anymore. And then in this past episode, she hinted about Sweet Tea, so it's probably somebody from the South. And the two big hints that stood out to me were Built an Empire and Destiny. Destiny's Child's Kelly Rowland. So I think it could be Kelly Rowland. And obviously last week she sang A Million Reasons by Lady Gaga. Out of this world good. I think it's Kelly Rowland. Nicole Scherzinger thinks it's Taraji P. Henson. Joel McHale thought Jessica Simpson. And Jenny had a nice guess with Regina King. I wouldn't be shocked if Jenny was right. T-Rex is very energetic. There was a party hat, a pink party hat, in which the Dance Moms cast wore in their costume of their first competition group dance on the very first episode of Dance Moms, and a dance called Party, Party, Party. And this person hinted at a one-hit wonder, or don't be a one-hit wonder, a Bumblebee, The World, Double Dare. My guess is Nia Seox Frazier, who was in Dance Moms and was somebody that was in the show pretty much for most of its entirety. She was probably the one that really didn't leave. And she got better as a dancer as the years gone on. But there was a hint that stood out to me about singles and doubles and Double Dare. And Robin Thicke had the guess of Liza Koshy, who is a part of the show Double Dare on Nickelodeon. So I won't be surprised if Robin's right. Ken Jeong guessed Lily Singh, and Joel McHale guessed Michaela Schifrin, the skateboarder. And we talked about the Swong already. And obviously it ended up being Bella Thorne. I thought it was Kristen Stewart, and I initially thought Gabby Douglas, but there are a couple of clues in the second package that made me think otherwise. And I decided to go with Kristen Stewart because there was a lot of hints about Twilight and Bella, and she played Bella in Twilight, and obviously ended up being Bella Thorne. And Joel McHale thought it was Mila Kunis, and Ken Jeong thought it was Kristen Bell, and then initially said Sandra Bullock, which that would have been crazy if it was Sandra Bullock in my mind. And then the Rhino performed last week. There's hints about having ups and downs in his life. There was a guitar, a hint from being from the South. There was a South sign. There was a ring, and then there's hints about tennis. And then his yearbook hint, that was like the thing from last week. He said that family was important and he was performing for a king. Performing for a king is a little head scratching for me. I wonder who that is. I thought last week that it was Peyton Manning. I'm going to stick with that guess, but I don't feel good about it because of the voice disguisement. I am getting vibes about Peyton, like that deep voice disguise. But the singing voice makes me think Tim Tebow. And there's a lot of football hints in there. And that'd be ironic, though. Tim Tebow, Peyton Manning, the irony with them is that Peyton Manning replaced Tim Tebow as the Broncos quarterback, and then Tebow was traded to the Jets, obviously. So I think it's Peyton Manning. I don't feel strong about it. It's funny because 2 weeks ago I thought it was A-Rod or Michael Strahan. Nicole Scherzinger had a nice guess last week of Ryan Lochte, who is the Olympic swimmer, who obviously had a rough point in his life and was doing drugs and had that incident in Rio. And I don't think Tim Tebow's married. That's why I don't think it's Tim Tebow, because Rhino mentioned his wife a bunch of times. And I know Peyton Manning's also married. Ryan Lochte's married. And I know Ryan Lochte's wife has been there for him the whole time. And Rhino has made some hints about that. And then who else went through rough times in his life was Peyton Manning, who obviously was cut from the Indianapolis Colts after his neck surgeries. He signs with Denver. Had some success in Denver, made 2 Super Bowls, won 1. So he's been through a lot in his life, too. And I'm sure his wife was there with him from every step of the way, too. So even though I don't feel super about my Peyton Manning guess, but I won't be surprised if I do end up being right. Won't be stunned if it's Tim Tebow. But like I said, I don't think Tim Tebow's married. Ryan Lochte, I think, would be more likely than Tim Tebow, even though it does sound like Tim Tebow under the mask, which is weird. My prediction on who goes home tonight, I'm going to say that T-Rex goes home. Do I feel good about it? No. And I think T-Rex goes, and I think it is Nia Frazier, formerly of Dance Moms. And obviously T-Rex hinted about modeling, and that's what Nia does nowadays. She models and she does some acting as well. So I do think it's Nia, although Jenny did guess Maddie Ziegler a few weeks ago too. And obviously Maddie was the face of that show and from a dancer standpoint. But yeah, I think it's Nia, but I don't feel super about it at all. But the one I feel the best about in terms of guesses, I feel really good about Kelly Rowland being the Night Angel because of obviously the Destiny and Built an Empire hints that were revealed. Alrighty, Lego Masters is on tonight, right after Masked Singer on Fox. Tonight's episode is about good versus evil. And this one is going to be where the contestants create evil lairs and fly vehicles through Lego worlds. And Terry Crews is supposed to be involved in this episode as well. The contestants that are left, Tyler and Amy, Sam and Jessica, Mark and Boone, and Aaron and Christian. Last week, Richard and Flynn went home. Aaron and Christian were at risk last week. Mark and Boone were on a 3-episode winning streak, but they ended up being safe. Tyler and Amy won last week, and Sam and Jessica came in second. And these are obviously the best 4 left, in my opinion. The group that I think is going to end up going home this week, I don't feel strongly about it, but I think that Aaron and Christian are going to go home. I think there's a chance that Sam and Jessica go home. And it's funny, they've come a long way. They were at risk the first 2 weeks, and then they came in second in week 3, and then were safe a few weeks in a row, and they came in second last week. I think Tyler and Amy are going to win. That's my guess for right now, although Mark and Boone are really good as well. So I think it's going to come down to Mark and Boone and Tyler and Amy, and I think the group that goes home tonight will be Aaron and Christian, but I won't be shocked if it's Sam and Jessica, even though they really have come a long way since the start of the show. Now I'm going to do my top 10 albums of 2019. It's very similar to the artists. A lot of the same artists' albums are on here. So, that's just a random little coincidence there. So, without further ado, my top albums of 2019. My honorable mention is Wildcard, Miranda Lambert. It was a good album, 2 singles. It all comes out in the wash and Bluebird, a country rock album. Jay Joyce produced it, and a few singles on there. So that's my honorable mention. 10th place, Father of the Bride, Vampire Weekend. Very solid album. Released May 3rd of last year. Pop rock album. A bunch of producers, Ariel Reschild, Urza Coing, Dave Maklovich, Rostam Bajimi, Blood Pop DJ Die, Steve Lacy, and Buddy Ross. 3 singles off the album: Harmony Hall 2021, Sunflower Big Blue, and This Life Unbearably White. This is a double-sided album, obviously, because Harmony Hall and 2021 were together, Sunflower and Big Blue were together, and This Life and Unbearably White were together. So, technically 3 songs, but you could argue it's really 6, but it's 3 in my mind because they're double singles. So, Vampire Weekend, up-and-coming band, for sure. 9th place, Thank You Next, Ariana Grande. 3 singles on there, most notably 7 Rings, which was the second single that came out on the album. Thank You Next was first, and then Break Up With Your Girlfriend, I'm Bored was third. Pop, R&B, and Trap. Producers Charles Anderson, Brian Baptiste, Tommy Brown, Michael Foster, Ilya, Max Martin, Happy Perez, and Pop Wanzel. 8th place, 'Cause I Love You, Lizzo. Solid album. Technically 4 singles, but they list 3. Juice, Tempo, 'Cause I Love You, and then obviously the one that everybody knows in the deluxe version of the album, Truth Hurts. So technically 4. She produced her own album along with Ricky Reed, Nate Marasco, ex-ambassadors Oak, Sweater Beats, Dan Farber, Tobias Wincrom, Mike Sabath, Zer Kolalo, and Travarius. Released April 19th of last year. Pop, funk, R&B, rock, and hip-hop. 7th place, Everyday Life, Coldplay. A very solid album by a band that has been successful for over a decade now. This came out the end of November last year. Rick Simpson, Dan Green, Bill Racklow, Angel Lopez, Federico Vinver, and Max Martin were the producers of the album. A Parlophone Atlantic album. The singles Orphans, Arabesque, Everyday Life, and Champion of the World. 6th place, Lover, Taylor Swift. A really good album that came out last August. Pop, electro pop, pop rock, and synth pop. Taylor produced it herself along with Jack Antonoff, Joel Little, Louis Bell, and Frank Dukes. The singles off of this album, Me, You Need to Calm Down, Lover, and The Man. 5th place, While I'm Living, Tanya Tucker. A really good album by the country star. The singles, The Wheels of Laredo, Hard Luck, The House That Built Me, Bring My Flowers Now, and The Winner's Game. Produced by Brandi Carlile and Shooter Jennings. 4th place, Norman effing Rockwell, Lana Del Rey. A really good album. This was released at the end of August last year. Soft rock, pop, psych pop, and folk rock. Del Rey produced the album along with Jack Antonoff, Rick Nowels, Andrew Watt, Happy Perez, Kieran Menzies, Dean Reed, and Mighty Mike. The singles, Mariners Apartment Complex, Venice Beach, Hope is a Dangerous Thing for a Woman Like Me to Have, But I Have It, Do in Time, The Greatest, which I think is the best song on the album, and Norman effing Rockwell. In 3rd place, Hollywood Bleeding, Post Malone, a really good album by the rapper. It was released last September, a pop album, really pop rap. Produced by Andrew Watt, Blood Pop, Brian Lee, Carter Lang, DJ Dai, Emile Hanye, Frank Dukes, Happy Perez, Jahan Sweet, Louis Bell, Matt Tavares, Nick Mira, Post Malone himself, and Wallace Lane. The singles off the album, Wow, Goodbyes, Circles, which I think is the best song, Enemies, Allergic, and Take What You Want. 2nd place, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Billie Eilish. A really, really good album by the superstar singer. Came out at the end of March last year. Pop, electro pop, avant pop, and art pop. Very dark album. Phineas produced the album. The 6 singles off the album, You Should See Me in a Crown,
When's the Party Over? Bury a Friend. Wish You Were Gay. Bad Guy, which I love that song. That's the best song on the album. And All the Good Girls Go to Hell were the songs off the album. And the number one album of 2019, Ed Sheeran, number 6 Calibrations Project. 8 singles, released last summer in July. Pop, hip-hop, R&B, and rock. Sheeran, Benny Blanco, Boyita, Kenny Beats, Fred, Jahan Sweet, Steve Mack, Max Martin, Shellback, Bruno Mars, 1985, Joe Rubel, and Skrillex all produced the album. The singles, I Don't Care, Cross Me, Beautiful People, Blow, Best Part of Me, Antisocial, South of the Border, and Take Me Back to London. All those songs came out last year, and he really had the best year of any singer in the year 2019. So that's it, my top 10 albums of the year. Tomorrow's show, the latest with the coronavirus within sports and pop culture. Any other news I have for you, my latest NFL mock draft I'll have, as well as my top 10 baseball players of 2019. Hope you guys have a great day, everybody.